is a story about the project Delft Measures Rain, a project that was born out of scientific interest for the variability of rainfall in cities, and with a need for more real-time and on-the-ground collected data. But also, a project that was only made possible due to an interest to involve citizens in science and climate adaptation. Because, let's face it, there is no project possible without funding, and funding was secured due to the promising opportunities of involving citizens with rainfall measurements, and not for its scientific purposes. Variability in rainfall in cities is difficult to determine because of the difficult circumstances of measuring rainfall in cities. For example, all standards to ensure high-quality rainfall data demands that the rainfall measurement device is placed at a large distance from the other objects. Other objects being trees, buildings, or anything else higher than the measurement device. A city therefore doesn't leave many options. However, because of those high buildings and factors like the so-called heat island effect, the rainfall in the city is expected and known to have a high variety. And in a city, this can determine whether sewer systems overflow or not, especially since climate change is inducing more intense and extreme rainfall events, at least in the Netherlands. Increasing measurements of rainfall all over the city therefore sounded promising to get more insights into this. We designed a project where we could meet the needs of the scientists, while keeping it still applicable and practical for the citizens that would join. That is often the hardest part. A scientist needs a measurement location at every square kilometer, measured every morning at 8 a.m. with a device that has a high precision and with a measurement period lasting as long as possible. However, people want to go on holiday or want to sleep in during the weekends, probably don't want to spend much money, and might not like to do the same thing every day, voluntarily, for a long time. The intermediate solution became therefore to measure every morning around 8 a.m, so an hour earlier or later was also okay. The project lasted for 3 months, but we left it to the citizens to decide how long they would participate and in which weeks. We did demand they would at least measure for 2 weeks in a row, so it would still contribute in a significant manner. And we used self-made or simple funnel rain gauges that were low cost and we could fund and distribute ourselves from the project money. Since we needed measurements to be taken in gardens of cities, of citizens, and those measurements should be recorded and passed on via a smartphone application, we needed to target people with a garden and people that didn't mind using a smartphone. And we believed people with an interest in knowing how much it rained in their city and who wanted to understand more of how climate change was influencing this would consider joining. Of course, other motivations were also important, like that their efforts had clear contributions to research by scientists at the university of their own city. We had just decided all of this and managed to receive money for a first pilot study to be held in the summer of 2020, when the corona pandemic hit us. And then we had to reconsider everything again, especially because we had counted on being able to hold meetings and workshops face to face. However, we figured that even without that type of contact, people might have an extra motivation to join. Everybody was stuck at home and had little else to do, so perhaps they were really interested in some new activity they could do in their garden. We decided to go for it, and we recruited only via social media and the local newspaper, using little money for the ads. And it worked. About 250 people registered for the project, while we were only aiming for about 100. We quickly did the math and decided we could provide material for all. Great! Or perhaps not. Well, you should always consider that there are people that register but afterwards realize they don't consider all the expectations we had of the participants. So we didn't perhaps do the perfect management of expectations from the recruitment onwards, but at least we did it the moment that they had to decide to really put work in it or not. In the end, because of that, At least half of the registered people didn't contribute. Between July and September of 2020, we received in the end 1,991 measurements from 95 participants. Still, we were pretty satisfied because that was about the number we had wanted to reach. 95 participants out of 100. Those 1,991 measurements were subsequently analyzed by TU Delft bachelor student Ilias Timori, guided by the principal investigator Marie-Claire ten Veldhuis. Dr. Marie-Claire ten Veldhuis. The results were promising. Not only did we receive a lot of data, but most of the data was as reliable as the official KNMI, the Royal Dutch Meteorological Institute, data. Because the KNMI has a lot less rain gauges per square kilometer, the pilot provided a higher resolution of rain measurements within Delft. That is exactly what we were looking for. We visualized all data on our online and real-time data map, and an overview of the most important results were also shared in an infographic. There were some improvements to be made, however. We hadn't made it clear enough that it was really important to measure around 8 a.m. in the morning and why this was so important. Therefore, many citizens had decided to take on a regular hour during the day that suited them. Quite understandable. In the year after that, when we decided to repeat the project, we therefore really focused on this minor but very important detail and explained that if we wouldn't measure around 8 a.m., the measurements are not comparable anymore. We needed to really have the sum of 24 hours, and that sum needed to be the same sum as the measurements on the other side of the city. In 2021, 105 citizens of the city Delft gathered about 5,000 rain measurements over a 3-month period. This time from the 1st of August till the 31st of October. And again, we asked 2 bachelor students to analyze the data. About half of the dataset was analyzed by the students Karen Chen and Raphael van Beek. They did only half because their thesis took place while the citizens were still collecting data. About half a year later, while I'm writing this piece, we just found an interested student that will continue to dive into the whole dataset. The results were again very promising, and we put a summary of those results in an infographic to be shared with all participating citizens. Additionally, we organized a webinar during which the students Karen and Raphael presented their results, and the main researcher explained what this meant. We have now done the project 2 years in a row. Some people joined both years, and they're still motivated even to continue in 2022. This is really important because the more measurements we take at the same locations, the better the dataset becomes. We therefore want to motivate them to join, but even more important, to continue. We have tried to implement a variety of methods to keep them involved and engaged. We organized both years a webinar at the start and at the end of the project. We made small vlogs, one for example by the principal investigator explaining the research purpose, and by other contributors in the team. And we also involved them via interviews and designed challenges they could participate in. We communicated not only about the project but also about topics related to it, like how to implement green measures in their gardens for the rainfall to infiltrate, and other related topics. We opened a forum and kept up an email address for all their possible questions, and we made 2 weekly newsletters. And of course, we made a good manual to explain how to install these rain gauges, how to take measurements, and how to record these measurements. And the manual wasn't just functional, it also looks pleasant to the eyes, which is something to make it more attractive to actually being read. In the first year, we had only involved the citizens by asking them to take measurements. However, in the second year, we increased this and asked around who was interested in giving input to a paper we were writing. And now We will involve 10 of them that showed interest in designing part of the new ideas we have for the third year of implementation. Slowly, their participation changes, and we leave it up to the citizens how involved they want to be. This was the story of Delft Measures Rain. It is an unfinished story because the project and the research have not finished yet. But we hope that it has given you some more concrete insight into how a citizen science project is designed and developed, and how the story and the theory shared in the course can be applied in practice.